Hi, Anushka.
Hi, Lila. Can you see my video? Oh, there we are.
Yeah.
Okay.
And do you want me to, I will advance the slides, but do you want me to make you co-host for any reason?
That might be, yeah, because I have, it might be easier because I'm going to make the session interactive and ask
Okay.
them sort of questions.
Okay.
So it'd be good.
So I've made you co-host, but if I'm sharing and you're the co-host, can you advance the slides?
Oh, I'm not sure.
I think you'll still have to ask me to
Oh, okay.
advance
We'll
the
just make it
slides.
work.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you should be able to. That should be an advance that Zoom needs to make because
I
now
know
there
what's
are so many multiple presenters
right.
um,
Yeah.
and I also want to ask you, is it Ariano? Okay,
Perfect. Yeah.
great.
Yeah. You have
Um,
no idea how people have butchered both my first and last name.
oh, I know. I mean, my full first name is Lilamini. No one can say that.
Oh.
But they even struggle with Lila.
I know.
But hopefully we'll have a good turnout. I mean, this is the first time we're doing this, so
Yeah. How
uh,
many do you have who have signed up?
I think there were 85 RSVPs
Oh,
from
wow.
Boston and then smaller numbers from other cities.
Okay.
So,
That's
but
great.
I know that people get busy. Hi, Jean. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
I'm well, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks so much for attending today.
Yeah, of course. I was listening to you say that people kind of butcher both of your names, and I
Hmm.
can attest to that. They sometimes people get a little confused with my name as well, the extra N and the E. So
Yeah.
nice job. Nice to meet you both.
Nice meeting you. So I don't have like Zoom room help, so I'll also be kind of letting people in as we're doing this.
Yeah, that's great.
And maybe we'll give people an extra sort of 2 minutes um, and let our presenters join as well. I know we're right at 12, but I'll just give people a little more time. I know for some of you, it's on the West Coast, it's first thing in the morning. Casey, I'm going to make you co-host. I wonder if you could let people in.
Absolutely.
Thank you. For those of you who may not have met her, Casey's my colleague in the Bay Area, our project on-ramp manager.
Morning.
So can you see if you can let people in? Is that working, Casey?
I'm willing to
Okay,
now.
perfect.
Yeah.
Wonderful. We'll give everyone another minute, and I'll just Jen, thank you, Jen, for being here to present, and thank you, Andrea, as well. Nice to see you this morning. So while people are arriving, I just want to introduce myself. I haven't met many of you. My name is Lila Neal. I sit in Boston, but I am the National Director of Project OnRamp. As some of you may know, different companies have sort of various ways of engaging with Project OnRamp. So some of you know, as supervisors, some of you know that your intern has come through this special program called Project OnRamp, but many of you, we've engaged with HR, so you may not know that your intern has come through Project OnRamp. So in a nutshell, Project OnRamp is a program that helps low-income undergraduates, and find low income as any undergraduate receiving a federal Pell Grant. They're eligible for our program, and it's really to help these students to access summer internships in the life sciences. And our sort of secret sauce, what we've done is we've asked companies to create sort of a separate lane for hiring these students. They're all talented. They're at four-year colleges and universities doing really well in school, but many of them have zero corporate experience on their resumes. And if they threw their resumes into the ring with all of the hundreds of other resumes that you get in a summer, they probably wouldn't have a chance of being hired. But with us sort of advocating for them to be hired through a slightly different process, where, they are competing for these roles, but they're competing against each other, we've been able to be pretty successful in our 5 cities. So Boston is our most robust program. Many of you might be from Boston. We're going to have about 200 students working at life science companies in Boston this summer. And then our second biggest program is in the Bay Area. Casey, who's here, is our manager in the Bay Area. And then we have programs in San Diego, which is also quite robust, and then smaller programs in both New York and Philadelphia. So that's Project OnRamp in a nutshell. Over the years, we've been in existence since 2019, and we offer a lot of professional development on the student side. But over the years, managers have said to me that they would very much like us to offer some best practices and just some guidance to supervisors as well. So we're trying this for the first time this summer. Fingers crossed. Thank you all for showing up. And I really would very much like feedback from you after the session. You can email me just about whether this was the sweet spot, whether this perspective was helpful. I mean, we'll have a lot of content today, but just if this is the type of thing that's helpful, whether you'd like us to add more. So I'd love to, our mindset with this program is just to keep evolving it. It's still very young. And you all as supervisors are really one of our most important stakeholders in making this program better. So thank you so much for being here today. I am going to share my screen and start our presentation. Can everyone see my screen? Great, perfect. So thank you so much for being here. These are our presenters today. Thank you so much, Anushka, Jen, and Andrea, for stepping up to help. You're all sort of experienced professionals in the industry, on the HR side, and hopefully you'll be able to offer some really great insights. We really, again, wanted to do this best practice session because we found that managers, you as managers are not in this program are not connected to each other. So this is a way for all of you to sort of meet as well. We want to support our undergraduates, and you're a big part of us doing that. And just it never hurts to sort of go over attitudes and mindsets that can help in supervising these young people, sort of the cultural and generational differences that may crop up. So hoping to highlight some of those as well. We will move forward sort of very quickly. I don't think we're hoping to keep this to an hour to give you some time back, but built-in time for any questions or if we go over a little bit, but hopefully we'll be able to wrap up in an hour. I want to, does anyone have any sort of questions or comments right now?
Nope.
Okay, so let's move on to our first presenter. Andrea Dropkin-Mackey is the Associate Director of Talent Acquisition at Blueprint. Welcome, Andrea. Really happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. It's very nice to meet you all. I manage our early career programs here at Blueprint, which is has been my passion throughout my career. And I spent some time as a student career advisor at Northeastern University. So I took my experiences to put some thoughts together on thinking about week one and how can you set your student up for success. So Leila, if you could advance the slides. So here are, I'm sure you're thinking of a whole host of different things. Here are 4 things I thought could be a good starting point. Establishing a work plan, communicating expectations and norms, thinking about the logistics, and helping your student establish a network. And I think Leila said this, keep in mind that this may be your student's first work experience ever. So looking at this from that lens, and depending on the student you're bringing in, some of these things may seem obvious, but I always kind of come at it from a place of, if nobody's ever told them, how would they possibly know? And so if you could advance the slide again. Starting with the work plan, I recommend having something documented on paper that goes over what your student is expected to be working on. At Blueprint, some of our students have one long-term project, and some have a variety of different littler projects throughout the summer. I think either is great. Any sort of experience these students can get is fantastic. But can you document this? Is it a list of projects? Is it a full abstract of what their objective is for the summer? Something that they can go back to. So if you're in a meeting and they're like, what should I be working on? They can go back to the list, see what they're expected to be doing. Maybe they have some contacts of people that they can reach out to, and they can self-serve in terms of questions. And so there's 3 buckets I recommend if you're going to do something like this. One is that big overview. What are you doing this summer? What does it look like? And then the other 2 are about, what is the company going to get out of their work, and what are they going to get out of their work? And I think the first one is actually really important, and especially with Gen Z, they want to be making an impact and they want to know that their work matters. And so drawing that connection for them of, here's what you're working on, and here's why it's important to the company, and here's how you're making a difference here, and you are impacting patients, can be incredibly beneficial. And then, of course, what is the student getting out of it? So how is this going to benefit their skill set, their career development? And it doesn't need to be this document that you hand to them and that's the end of it. Like with our summer interns, we go over it and then we adjust it throughout the summer. Like, hey, do you still have time for this project? Does that still make sense? Should we shift it? So here it's a static document, but it's something that they can always refer back to. You can advance. I know I'm short on time, I'll go faster. So the second thing is communicating expectations and norms. And this is where I always say there is no such thing as over communicating when it comes to an intern. This could be their very first time in an office environment. And so a couple things that I would recommend that you touch on in one of your first one-on-ones during that first week. What is both of your communication styles? So how do you prefer to communicate, but also how does your student prefer to communicate? Gen Z really loves technology because they grew up with it. And so the research has showed us that they really want frequent communication with their manager in an easy way, whether it's text, whether it's IMs, whether it's Teams messages, whatever platform you have at your office. So I would just talk to them about like, what are their preferences and then what are your preferences, and align on how are you going to communicate, and how often are you going to be checking in? Is it a weekly check-in? Is it a daily check-in? I think it probably is very specific to your student and your style and what they're working on for you. But I would be clear on, you know, how independent do you want them to be? A lot of students get really nervous that they're going to make mistakes, which they are. And so we always say that to them, you are going to make mistakes. It's not if, it's when. But how much freedom do you want them to have to try to figure something out? And when do you want them to come to you? Like, kind of make that a little clear for them so that they know when to ask a question and when to kind of give it a shot and see how it lands. And then the rest of these, the organization norms and expectations, this may seem really obvious, but I've had students, especially when I was working at Northeastern, that would like try to schedule interviews at 7 o'clock at night. And I remember the student said to me, I had no idea business hours are 9 to 5, you know, because if you think about it, if nobody ever told you, how would you know that? And so really just being clear with them on things like, what are your office hours? If there's flexibility, what does that look like at your company? At Blueprint, we have something, we call it Blue Flex, but then we have Blue Flex for interns, co-ops, and fellows, and it really spells out, here's standard hours. You can shift, but if you're going to shift, here's what we want you to do so that it's really clear to us where you are. Is there a dress code? These sorts of things, I know they may sound obvious. I once had an intern ask me if he could bring snacks to work. And of course, we're all like, yes, of course you can bring snacks. How would you know that? You know, so I recommend just kind of being clear on any sort of expectations. And then the last thing is the timeline for deliverables. So if there's any sort of final presentation, when do you want a first draft? Or if there's some deliverable that you need by a certain date, make it really clear. You cannot over communicate is my advice. You can go to the next slide. And then the last piece of kind of tips in the first week, and I'm sure there's a ton of other things you're already thinking about, are how do you help your student establish a network? A huge part of a student's satisfaction in an internship is not necessarily the work. It can be a lot of the culture, but it's the manager and the people that they're working with. I know it's a lot of pressure. You make the experience for these students. And so how can you help them figure out their own career, network internally and externally? At Blueprint, we recommend all of our interns, their very first task is that they get a list of who they should have one-on-ones with, and then they go in and schedule them. And so in that process, they're learning our tool, which I know it can be daunting when we use Outlook. Like, you know, if you've never used that before, you're learning it on the job in a risk-free way. And then you've got your meeting set up, you know who you're going to talk to. We also assign a mentor. So somebody outside of you that they can go to and talk about things that are going on or ask questions of. And your company may already have something like this established. And then encouraging the independent networking. So encouraging them to go out and meet people within your company. And are there ways that you can help them help them do that or help them meet other interns either internally or externally to expand their network, helping them think through their long-term career and how their work with you fits into it. And so I think that that was all for me, and I'll pass it on to the next person.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Before we sort of move on, I wanted to ask, is there anybody, does anybody have any questions, comments? Have you had experiences during your first week where, which would be sort of helpful for the other managers to know about challenges? Okay, wonderful. Well, let's move on to the next session. I'd like to introduce Jen Jones. She's the Senior Manager of Human Resources at Seismic here in Boston. Thank you so much, Jen, for sort of sharing your perspective. I know that, everyone talks about the Gen Z and the millennials and sort of their slightly different attitudes and expectations. So really excited to hear insights that you can offer on this. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Leela and the whole team at Project On-Ramp for this really great cause and great organization. So yeah, let's get started. Slide, please. So just a couple of things we're going to go over today. We're going to talk about understanding the circumstances and the context that our interns come from. We're going to talk about shifting our perspective. We're going to talk a lot about empathy and action, how to initiate inclusive communication, and then finally just some best practices. So I'll try to stay within my 10-minute allotment here. Slide, please. So understanding the circumstances, when Leela first opened up, she talked a little bit about the context from which these students are coming from. And so a lot of them are from lower income families. They're underserved communities. They are oftentimes minorities and possibly first generation. So we can make some assumptions about what their experiences have been to date. So as a supervisor, you can either be a gatekeeper or you can be an advocate. You can be someone that welcomes them into this life sciences world, or you can be someone that makes them feel uncomfortable and makes them have a bad taste in their mouth and they don't want to keep going with this entire industry. So it's a very important role. Like was stated before, this may be someone's first experience in the corporate world, first job, first experience with a supervisor. So you hold a very, very special piece of power and real estate in their journey. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. Slide, please. So here are some examples of what a gatekeeper looks like and what an advocate looks like. And like I said, this is incredibly important to understand the distinction because these are students that have not had this experience yet. So when you're coming in, you're their first line of defense. So a gatekeeper says, I'm doing the student a favor. I see that this person is from a low-income community. They are from a place that doesn't have a lot of privilege. I am the savior here. I'm doing them a favor. Where an advocate might says, our intern deserves to be here. They're just like anybody else. They are intelligent, they are capable, and they deserve to be in this space. A gatekeeper might say, I don't expect too much from this student, from a student from this background. Where an advocate might say, I recognize their potential and I'm grateful to be a part of their journey. A gatekeeper might say, this intern is to be seen and not heard. There's no room for their opinions. And an advocate says, you know what, they might have some good ideas. Let's create some space for them to be innovative and share those ideas. And then finally, a gatekeeper is also the mindset that they don't really have an impact on this intern's career journey. Where an advocate says, I understand the weight of this opportunity. I understand what my role is, and I'm here to set this intern up for success. So some very staunch differences between these mindsets of a gatekeeper and an advocate. Slide, please. So it's really about shifting our perspective. And one thing that's important to note is that we all have cognitive biases. This is not something that anyone can escape. We all have it, just regardless of our race, our ethnicity, our sex, our gender, or anything. We all have cognitive biases. So it's really our opportunity and our responsibility to make sure that these biases don't impact our ability to be empathetic and to make equitable decisions. So embracing cultural and generational differences centers on shifting our perspective from thoughts and actions that limit our ability to practice empathy to optimizing opportunities for mutual growth and shared experiences. So this is also about that shared and mutual learning, where instead of looking at it like, I'm going to teach this student everything they need to know, also looking at it like, what can this student teach me? What can I learn about their background? How can I make this environment robust enough that we can learn from each other? Slide, please. I know I'm talking fast, but Lila only gave us 10 minutes, so we're trying to get through it. So I talked a little bit about cognitive bias. And so cognitive bias really comes down to limiting beliefs. And we have the power to interrupt those biases. We have the power to open up our mindset and say, actually, this may be something that's been ingrained in me, but I recognize it as something that is no longer helpful and something that I need to unlearn. So how does cognitive bias show up? So this is all internal thoughts, right? So our internal thought says, this intern's so different from me. We're probably not going to have anything in common. Whereas an open mindset would say, I'm excited to learn about their background and connect. And there's probably some stuff we do have in common. If I give them enough space, we probably have a lot of commonalities. Some limiting beliefs also look like they must learn to fit in with our company culture and our company norms. And instead, we can shift that to, I'm focusing on the ways they can add new perspectives and insights to our team. We don't have a lot of time to talk about this today, but there is a concept called cultural fit versus cultural add. And so cultural fit is the idea that you want someone to come and be in the mold of what your company already has, which oftentimes is very homogenous within our industry, right? Or you have a cultural add, which is somebody that can add something new. Someone has a new perspective, a new background, a new language, a new way of thinking about things. And that's how you really foster diversity within a group. Finally, this one speaks to a little bit of neurodiversity and neurodivergence. A lot of folks in the generations that we are targeting have a lot more knowledge on this than I did and probably previous generations did. And so one thing to think about for a limiting belief is saying they should learn at the same pace in the same ways that I did. Because when I was their age, I knew how to do these things. Or when I was their age, I already had knowledge of this. And a way to flip that within our minds is to say, I'm committed to being adaptable and flexible in my instruction. Some of these students may not learn in the same ways that you did or in the same ways that some of your team does. And that's okay. That doesn't mean that they're not smart. That doesn't mean that they're not capable, but it's up to you as a manager and a supervisor to be adaptable, flexible, and show some compassion. And this kind of ties in with that. They don't catch on quickly enough. They must not be smart. I'm accepting of new learning styles, things that I haven't tried, things that I need to adapt to this specific person. So it's all about being open-minded. Next slide, please. So a lot of understanding and navigating cultural and age gaps is about understanding how to show up with empathy. And that's woven throughout all of this. So empathy is the action of understanding, being aware of, and identifying with the experiences and emotions of others while showing up with humility and compassion. And that part is really important. And so sympathy and empathy are very, very different. And we could probably spend a few hours talking about that, but we won't. But empathy is active. Empathy is understanding someone's feelings and experiences as if they were yours. So empathy offers space and compassion, but it's not all about me, right? And then sympathy is more passive. It says, I feel sorry for them, but I'm over here in my high rise. They're wherever they are. And sympathy offers unsolicited advice. Sympathy says, this is what I would have done if I was you, right? So this is important when we're looking at the context for which our students are coming from. They don't need our sympathy, they need our empathy, and they need an opportunity. Slide, please. So what does an empathetic supervisor look like? Empathetic supervisor recognizes and celebrates differences without demanding assimilation. So they don't have to be just like you. They don't have to be like your team, but you can meet them where they are and embrace the things that make them different. Empathetic supervisors are visionaries. They can identify with a person's experience, even if they have not had the same experience, right? So we can understand themes. So even if you have not been through something, that doesn't mean that you can't find a theme that you can identify with a person's experience. Empathetic managers are natural observers. They're quick to listen and calculate the weight of their communication. Something that you say to your colleague who has been in in professional life for 10 plus years, you can say to them and they know that they can wipe it off their shoulder, no big deal. But these are interns. And so what you say to them matters to them. You are maybe their first boss, their first experience, and they will remember the ways that they were treated. So it's important to understand the weight of it, the magnitude of what you're saying, and be empathetic in your communication. And then finally, empathetic supervisors understand the circumstances without developing a savior complex. We could talk about this for hours as well, but we won't. A savior complex is basically saying, just like I said in the beginning, I'm doing this person a favor. I deserve all the praise and honor and glory because I took a chance on this student, when really it's not about you, right? So we can move on to the next slide. So inclusive communication, what that looks like. Leila, I'm not sure if these slides will be shared with the group afterwards, hopefully.
Yes, I
Okay,
will.
great. So
And you have quite a bit of time, about 6 minutes.
do I? Okay, great. I'll slow down. For inclusive communication, what we can do is create the space. Always make room for them to ask questions, and show patience with various learning styles. This is really probably the most important thing, because when dealing with big age gaps or generational or cultural differences, we have to assume that we don't know everything, right? We're not going to know that this is offensive in their culture and we're not going to know all those things. But if you show empathy and you create space, you will quickly catch on to the best ways to support someone. Active listening, also really important. Give your full attention. I have been in the corporate space for quite some time, and I've seen more later stage executives kind of look at interns as if they're insignificant, or that their opinions don't matter, or that they're not coming from a space of a whole lot of intelligence. And this is not the right path, right? We want to make sure that these people showing up, these students showing up, know that their opinions matter. Even if they are unfounded or they're not great, they still need the space to learn how to speak up, and they need you to facilitate that as a supervisor. So give them that space, ask clarifying questions. What did you mean by that? Or let me make sure I understand what you're saying, and try to lead that conversation. Obviously, mutual respect is very important, and this speaks to what I just said previously, that we're not going to know everything about someone's background and all the social cues. You're not going to know those things. But if you show mutual respect, this will go a long way with your interns. And so you seek to understand and not reprimand. You have to have a lot of patience and understand that people are coming from different contexts, and that's okay. Clarity and transparency. This was just spoken about, I think, by Andrea previously, is just be really clear in your communication and what you expect from them. Use language that's clear and concise. Avoid abbreviations and shortcuts. And most importantly, don't use industry lingo that they don't know, and assume that they would possibly know. And if you're going to use the lingo, explain it. So just things that we kind of say in normal life, in our professional spaces, they may not know those yet. So take the time to do that. And shift your focus from gaps to opportunities. One thing I like about some of the elders in my family is that they don't make me feel like I'm young. They make me feel like I'm an opportunity to learn something that they haven't come across yet. And so that makes our relationships much more fruitful, because I know something you don't, and you know something I don't. So let's work together, right? So there's common ground to be found between supervisor and interns, and you can really facilitate that with the rest of the team. And then finally, continuous improvement. Should really seek their feedback because you value it, not because you're trying to get some type of accolade out of it, but seek it because you want to do better as a supervisor. You want to do better as a leader, and you want to provide a space that this intern could possibly be somebody else's supervisor one day, and they can kind of look back to how you treated them. And that's important to keep this cycle going. And learn from your mistakes and own them. There are going to be some times that you miss it. There are going to be some times that you misspeak or say something out of turn, and that's okay, as long as you own it and long as you do not repeat that process. So these are just some ways to keep the communication going. And we can go to the next slide, please. All right, so finally, these are best practices. Number one, be intentional. Like I said, provide the space. And you'll be surprised that some people that are more introverted, once they have the space, they actually are much more extroverted. Listen without being condescending, avoid passive aggressive remarks or actions about their age or lack of experience. Of course, they don't have the experience yet, they're interns. That's why they're there to get it from you. Be patient. Don't assign unnecessary cultural norms and mores. So if there's something about your company culture that everybody just does, it could be we all eat our lunch at this time, or we all do this one thing, or we all wear jeans on Fridays, whatever it may be. Don't assume that they're just picking that up. Invite them in to join or not. It's okay if they don't. Anticipate their needs. Think about what you might have needed when you didn't know as much as you do now, and be intentional about it. And also be open to changing this as time goes on, right? They may not need the same things they did on day 1 that they do on day 10. So be open to being flexible. And then finally, lead by example. This has been stated before that you're likely or maybe your intern's first supervisor. So you should set the standard with empathy, kindness, and patience, and make sure that they know that you are a safe space to come to if they have questions and if they want to have some more clarity on something. So I think that is my time. And does anybody have any questions? I know I explained everything perfectly, so that's probably what.
Jen, that was so incredible, and I love the fact that you ended with empathy, kindness, and patience, because something we all can kind of, I know certainly I can kind of do more of when things get stressful. And yeah, I'd love to hear from anyone if you have any questions before we go on to the next unit or
Just
comment.
just a comment. Jen, I thought everything that you just mentioned was amazing, but also very applicable for just life in general. So, thank you for this.
You.
Okay, so we can go on to our next presenter. It's Anushka Ariano, who is based in the Bay Area and is the founder of Elysian HR Consulting. She works with companies both on the East and West Coast as an HR business partner. Welcome, Anushka. Thank you so much for volunteering your time today.
Absolutely. So happy to be here and support this wonderful initiative. I have actually worked in previous years as an HR business partner with a company or with several companies that had brought in interns. It so happened at those companies, the managers or the supervisors of these interns, it was their first time having an intern, and some of them had wonderful instincts, wonderful experiences. Others, not so much. They were nervous. And so this was really a collaboration with Project OnRamp to say, we do a lot to support the interns and the students to prepare them for the corporate world, but how do we also help support the managers or supervisors who are going to get these interns? So really happy that we were able to pull this all together. So if we go to the next slide. So this was already mentioned by Jen before, where she said, you hold the power, you as the manager or supervisor, you really have the power to shape and influence the experience of your student who's joining you. So in that spirit, I would like you to reflect on your very first job or your internship, okay? And think of that very first supervisor that you had and the impact that that individual made on your experience and on your future profession. So take a minute to think of that. And I know we've been awfully quiet, so I'm going to invite you to put it in the chat. What was the impact of your very first supervisor on yourself, your career, and your experience? And there are, I think, over 100 of us, so I'm hoping we can share in the chat. Don't be shy. She was great and very patient with me. Wonderful, Jen. Anyone else? And don't tell me it was so long ago that you cannot remember. I refuse to believe that. Respectful and patient, inspired my future career. He scared me, made me nervous and anxious. Oh no. And see, we remember those, right? All right, introduced me to opportunities, guided me through the company, still my current manager. And that's the reason I'm in pharma today. Without her, I wouldn't know how it felt to be supported and what a great leader looks like. Helps me build confidence, instilled confidence. I had an absentee supervisor, so I still worry about other people's career starts. Yeah, I learned a lot, created a safe environment, family-owned business, intense work ethic. I mean, the list goes on and on, right? The impact, again, that you are going to have on your interns' experience and possibly their long-term career is immense. And please don't take that lightly. Go in with kind of that experience that you had, and having learned from that, the best practices of what you would like to demonstrate or what you would not like to do to make sure your intern has a great experience. All right, let's move to the next slide. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. We are doing a boot camp for the interns tomorrow, where we're going to be spending a lot of time going through what is a growth mindset, what is a fixed mindset, and really teaching them and encouraging them to adopt the growth mindset, which is not being stuck in a certain way of being or doing, but being open to possibilities, putting themselves out there, taking a risk, viewing challenges as opportunities, raising their hand for things that they haven't done before. That's what we are going to encourage. And I hope that you are able to also instill that same level of risk-taking, learning from failures, just as much as they're going to come into it, hopefully, with that attitude. Now, I know, again, it was said in the past, and I think Andrea said this, was understand your intern's communication style, right? How do they like to communicate? By the same token, what I request you to do is find out how your intern would like to learn. There is a lot they're going to be learning in this new opportunity, and not everyone learns the same way. So how can you modify your managerial style, your leadership style, in order to best fit how that individual is, taking in information? Some of us can be very visual learners. Some of us just want to read and assimilate and understand and analyze. Others want to be shown how to do things. Don't assume you know what's best for your student. Ask them, have a robust conversation. So let's move to the next slide. Okay, so I'm going to go into 3 different techniques for working with your students when it comes to sort of teaching them or helping them learn on the job. They're 3 very different ways of communicating, and it is your job to understand which is the right method to use for the individual. And this can vary. It can be the same individual, but your style might change over time. So the first one is teaching. So if you click again, and then one more. So teaching is when an individual is brand new to a topic. They have no prior knowledge or history of that information, and they are required to adhere to some sort of protocol, right? SOPs, handbooks. It is something that they must learn. So the language that you can use here is the SOP to train to. Let me show you how it's done. Here are the steps you need to follow. Please refer to the manual. This is when you are actively teaching them something that they may or may not have the knowledge of before. So that is teaching. This is reserved for individuals who are brand new and who do not have this prior information. All right, let's move to the next slide. So we talked about teaching. The next one is mentoring. And sometimes people get this a little bit confused. So mentoring is when someone is somewhat familiar. They've gone through the initial training, they have some knowledge, and there could be multiple ways to handle it. It doesn't have to follow a rigid protocol. There might be some level of creativity and innovation that could be brought about. Mentoring is when you actually make some suggestions to the individual. So in my experience, this is what's worked. Here are some options to consider. How about giving XYZ a try? You're not telling them, you're not teaching them and telling them exactly what to do, but you're throwing out some suggestions, some recommendations based on your own past experiences, which then they can assimilate with their learning and then figure out what is the best course of action. So that is mentoring. So teaching and mentoring. Let's go to the last one, which is coaching. So coaching is, sometimes people get mentoring and coaching a little bit mixed up. Coaching is very, very different. Coaching is used with individuals who you know have the ability and the information to make their own decisions. It's just that something is holding them back. They're either not confident or they're nervous, but you know that they have the information and the ability to reach the right decision. So rather than you telling them what to do or suggesting to them what they should do, your job in coaching is to simply ask them the right questions. Ask them things like, what options have you already considered? What might be the pros and cons of these options? What have you tried? How else might you approach it? And have them do the hard work. This is the same concept of don't, give them the fish, teach them how to fish for themselves. This is going to build that muscle memory and the ability for them to start thinking on their own. They're going to feel empowered to be able to think in different ways, and that feeling of gratification of when they perform the task and they succeed, they're going to feel like they accomplished it. It wasn't just something that they were told to do or recommended to do. There is this sense of empowerment. By the reverse, if it didn't work out, and if you had just taught them or mentored them, they might easily say, well, it's not my fault, right? That's what my manager told me to do. So this is creating and instilling in them the confidence and the ability to think for themselves. Coaching can take a lot more work. It's a lot more involved. It's so much easier to just give people the answers or give suggestions. In my job as an HR professional, when someone comes to me and asks me a question, I find myself very quick to just provide the answer. At the end of the day, they've come to me with a question. Clearly, they want my answer. And that's what I end up doing. I've had to train myself to take a pause and really find out what exactly do they need from me? Do they happen to have the answers? And let them do a little bit of work for that. Now, I'm not suggesting you do mentoring right off the gate. I would start with teaching so they come up to speed. I would then transition to some mentoring to give them recommendations and options. And once they are maybe competent enough to tackle problems on their own, but they are struggling, that's when I would move to coaching. All right. So you can evolve how you communicate and how you interact with your intern based on these three different techniques: teaching, mentoring, and coaching. All right, so let's go to the next slide. So time for a pop quiz. I want you to tell me, and you can put in the chat, which technique are we using here? So Salma has been interning with you for 2 months now and has worked on various lab operations. She's encountered a problem with an experiment and asks for your advice. And let's say it usually takes someone 4 months to be completely proficient. Which one would you use? Training, mentoring, or coaching? Any guesses? You can put it in the chat. Right. Rasika, Anna, yes. Mentoring, right? Giving them some guidance, giving them some suggestions, some of your advice. This is probably the right approach in this scenario. Wonderful. Let's move to the next one. Here's another one. Jay has mastered all the protocols assigned to him. He lacks the confidence to make a decision to take the next step, and he comes and asks for your help. Perfect. This one is coaching. And some of the questions you can ask are, well, what protocols have you tried? Why do you think this one might not work, right? What solutions do you have? Wonderful. All right, the third one. Avery is a new intern who needs to learn the protocols of working in a regulated environment. So by process of elimination, we come to teaching. Absolutely. Absolutely. Wonderful. Arts and crafts. John, what is arts and crafts? Um, all right, so let's move to the next slide. So what I really want you to think about is situational leadership. So, in my line of work, I do a lot of training on coaching and situational leadership. Again, we don't have a lot of time to go into that, but just remember, it isn't a one size fits all, and it's not even one size that fits one person. Your style can evolve with that same individual over time. It's really understanding and gauging where your student is and what they need from you. Don't assume you know what they want or what you're going to give them is going to be helpful. Simply ask them, what would you like from me? How can I help you? Let them articulate what they need so that you can then best serve their needs. And I think that is all I have for this part of the session.
Thank you so much, Anushka. And I do want to just see if anybody has any questions. Feel free to speak up. We always encourage our interns to do so. So would love to hear from managers as well. This is sort of the end of our content. Anything that you wanted to sort of highlight or anything that's particularly resonated with all of you?
If I can add something. Hi, everybody. This is Casey, Project On-Ramp Manager for the Bay Area. For our managers that have called in from the Bay, just to let you all know and to remind you, we are going to be offering a bunch of different professional development courses that really tie in very well with a lot of what our speakers today just spoke about. So just to kind of remind you that there will be additional wraparound support for your interns as well.
Thanks, Casey. And that kind of really brings me to this slide and wrap up. Thank you to our presenters, Anushka, Andrea, Jen. You kept to time. You offered us some really great information. And I just wanted to kind of wrap up by saying, our goal with Project On-Ramp is to really prevent we want this to be a win for you as the company and for the intern. So we want to, if there is any issue, any problem of any kind, we really want to nip it in the bud. So I want to know that I'll be accessible to you in the summer. Of course, your HR team will be accessible in the summer. We work very closely with them as well. Your intern also has an advisor from the organization or university that they come from. So that is a person who your intern can lean on for help. Your intern can also contact the project on-ramp manager in your local city. So there really is a lot of support. And we do really want to make sure that if you're sensing that there's going to be an issue, that you reach out. I have to say, since summer 2019, we've been running this program and we really never have had any major issues or disasters. But we have had some situations where interns have had questions or concerns, or managers have had questions or concerns, but didn't really feel like they could ask. And that led to maybe a slightly less optimal summer experience than otherwise could have been. So please reach out, no matter what it is. I am really happy to help. My email is right on there. And I can either direct you to the person who can help you, I can intervene, I can talk to your intern. So whatever it is, I am there for you. I'm going to stop sharing and just ask again if any of you, I'm kind of interested to know sort of what brought you to this session. Was there something that you kind of really felt like you wanted to learn about the student population? I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but Sue, I see you on the call. You're a new Project On-Ramp partner. What brought you here today?
Oh, I just wanted to hear more about the program, and it's great to see that the topics covered. So thank you.
That's
Lila,
great.
we do have a question in the chat.
Yeah.
Would we recommend managers reaching out to interns before they start?
I think that's a wonderful practice because it just makes them feel more welcome when they show up on their first day. It's not a requirement, but I do think it's a wonderful thing to do. And before everybody hops off, if you don't mind turning on your camera, I would really love to take a screenshot. And then Casey, if you could help me by reading some questions in the chat as well after I take the screenshot. So if everyone's ready, let me take off my reading glasses. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much. Yeah, so any other questions in the chat, Casey?
Just a reminder for some of the folks that joined a little late. This call has been recorded. Lila just ended it, and we will be sending it out. Let's see, other questions.
Yeah, I'll echo the question that my Lila had, right, which is on the Project On-Ramp. Like, what other sessions are there? Because I do hear about this lunch session that may be happening that's on Wednesdays, but is there anything else we can keep in mind with and align with, right, from a Project On-Ramp standpoint in terms of, are you going to be doing a roundtable presentations that they're going to do? Are they going to get together? Are the interns going to get together? Like, what else do we need to be aware of so that we can provide the right level of support and connection?
Yeah, so in each city, we are offering some professional development sessions. In Boston, because we have so many interns, they're all on Zoom. They're all virtual sessions. And of course, for anything Project On-Ramp related, work takes precedence. So if you have an all hands meeting or some sort of team meeting at the same time as a Project On-Ramp event, we expect the intern to go to their work event. But if they are free, then it's a required thing for students to attend. A lot of this student population don't understand the importance of professional networks. And these events are all geared to really more than the content. It's for them to meet people in the industry and to gain mentors and advisors who are part of their network. So really encourage your student to attend these events. Some of them are in person. I know San Diego and Bay Area have quite a few in-person sessions, as does New York. And it's just a great way for your student to network outside of the company.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. It was more of a, do you have a schedule or do you have more information so we can, because I have flexibility in being able to support it in terms of, yes, if there's a work thing, yeah, I mean, I understand, but at the same time, if I can be flexible or we can be flexible, I will totally do that. So I'm aware of the Wednesday. It looks like there's a Wednesday lunch sessions, but if there are others, just to let us, if there's any way for us to have a, visibility into, or just let us know what they are, then we'll make that adjustments. Because on the other side, I don't want the interns also sometimes some people be more bashful, right? So mine might say, well, there's this other session, but I don't know, maybe I'm not going to bring it up. I'm assuming my manager knows, right? So, and we may not. And I'd like, if we can get that insight, that'd be fabulous.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. And I think you're in Boston and we have the Zoom summer sessions, but we've also had sort of one-off sessions for interns. Like a popular one we had in Boston was called To Grad School or Not to Grad School. It was hosted by Bristol Myers Squibb, and they invited a lot of people to kind of talk about, like, do you need an advanced degree to be in this industry to be successful? And these are students who are just sort of learning about these career paths of like PhD, MD, master's degree. So that was very helpful. So that was an additional thing. So different cities may have sort of additional things that they add, and we will really be good about letting managers know.
Lila, hi everyone, I'm Yvonne Spicer, the Executive Director of LSC in Boston. And what we can certainly do is put out a list of the sessions, dates and times to all of the managers. Ask Tiffany to do that.
Yes. I think the manager should have a list, but If we do add anything to that, I will let you all know for sure.
We have a schedule for Bay Area that I share with managers, mentors, as well as the students. So we do have a schedule, a one-pager.
Awesome.
Any other questions, comments?
We have a couple questions. What is the final session for students like? This is coming from Annie, from Anne.
Yeah,
Are they-
so every city will have an internship showcase. We are very careful that at the showcase, students are not presenting on their work because it can be proprietary, as you know, but we do have students talk about sort of their growth during their internship, the high points of the internship. It's just a way to get all the students together in person. We invite companies that partnered with OnRamp as well as other supporters of OnRamp, our funders, and it's just a really nice celebration at the end of the summer. Most companies do have students do a company-wide presentation at the end of the summer, but that's not required, and that's really based on sort of what your company prefers to do.
We have another question about loving to hear about best practices as the summer kind of moves forward. This is, I'm not sure who this is from, SM Shell. So any like best practices as the summer kind of continues that maybe you want to
Yeah,
share?
I mean, this is the very first supervisor session we've done. So we'll definitely make a much more intentional effort to provide you with resources as well. And we have some hello, Ornella. I see Ornella Nelson from AbbVie on here. She's been a supervisor from 2019 on. And AbbVie has actually hired quite a few former Project OnRamp students here in the Boston area. So I know there are some very experienced supervisors as well, experienced with the Project OnRamp student. So it really would be nice to create more of an environment of sharing across cities and across supervisors.
One other question. Do we have any books or resources about mentorship or beginners of people managers that we might recommend?
Well, I want to throw that to our three presenters. Do any of you have a book or a resource website, anything that you can recommend?
So a good new supervisor book is For Your Information, FYI. So that's a pretty popular one.
Would you mind putting that in the chat, Anushka?
I get a lot of my resources from NACE, the National Association of Colleges and Employers. If you go on their website, they have a lot of different sessions, webinars, tips and tricks on how to manage students that you could look through and pick what resonates for you.
And actually, NACE is something that we really mirror with Project OnRamp. NACE has a set of 8 competencies that they really expect students would work on throughout college and during internships. And so we use that as a framework to sort of measure students' professional growth throughout their summer. And they do a survey at the end of the summer where they really need to report back on which of the NACE competencies they worked on during their internship and how they improved on them. So yes, I second that. NACE is an incredible website, a lot of great information on there. Well, thank you so much all. And we kept to time, and the information I thought was incredible, enlightening. Thank you so much again to our presenters, and thank you all for hiring through Project OnRamp, for really helping us not be gatekeepers, but really just to open the gates to students who otherwise really may not have a chance to kind of be in these rooms and learn these skills. So really, really thank you to all of you, because this couldn't happen without you. So thank you so much and have a wonderful week.